10 years, a decade of shared smiles, whispered secrets, and the careful construction of a perfect life. For Genevieve, her 10th anniversary was supposed to be a celebration of that fortress of love she'd built with her husband Marcus. He was a man who forgot nothing, whose grand gestures were as reliable as the sunrise. But as the evening deepened, a single, unexpected delivery arrived. It wasn't the gift he'd promised. It was a small, velvet box containing a diamond ring meant for another woman. What do you do when the proof of your husband's ultimate betrayal is accidentally delivered right to your door? The champagne flutes were Waterford, a wedding gift from Marcus's parents 10 years ago. Genevieve watched a single, determined bubble travel from the base of her glass to the frothy surface, a tiny, effervescent prisoner making a break for freedom. The sentiment felt uncomfortably familiar. Their home, a sprawling modern colonial in the manicured heart of Connecticut's affluent suburbs, was her gilded cage. From the outside, it was a portrait of success. A glossy feature in Hearth and Home Monthly had canonized it as such just last spring. The article featured a smiling family portrait Marcus with his easy boardroom charm and a jawline that seemed carved from granite. Genevieve, her art history degree, tucked away like an old photograph, now the elegant homemaker and philanthropic force. And their 7-year-old son, Leo, a cherubic tow-headed boy who would never know a day of want. The article had called their life aspirational. Genevieve called it well-managed. Tonight was their 10th anniversary. A decade. The word itself felt heavy, a solid, immutable milestone. Marcus, true to form, had orchestrated the evening with the precision of a corporate takeover. Leo was with his grandparents. A private chef, a quiet man named Antoine, with expressive flour-dusted hands, was currently plating their main course in the state-of-the-art kitchen. The scent of seared scallops and truffle oil wafted into the formal dining room, a space they used so infrequently that Genevieve felt like a guest in her own home. To 10 years, my love, Marcus said, raising his glass. The dim, recessed lighting caught the silver at his temples, a distinguished touch that made him even more handsome than the day they'd met. His eyes, a deep, reassuring blue, met hers over the rim of his glass. And to the next 10, may they be even better. Genevieve smiled, a practiced, perfect arc of her lips. To us. They clinked their glasses, the crystal singing a clear, sharp note into the quiet room. But as she drank, the champagne tasted flat, the bubbles a lie. The feeling of being managed, of being a beautiful object in Marcus's curated world, had been a low hum for years. Lately, it had been growing into a disquieting buzz. It was in the little things, the way he'd stopped asking about the novel she used to joke about writing and started asking what she'd chosen for the caterers at the hospital gala. The way his business trips seemed to multiply, his texts becoming shorter, more perfunctory. Landed safely. Long day. Talk tomorrow. He was a man perpetually in motion, a portfolio of successes, while she felt she was standing still, a beautifully framed painting on a wall he rarely looked at anymore. I have something for you, of course, he said, setting his glass down. He reached into the inner pocket of his tailored suit jacket. He was always in a suit, even at home. It was his armor. He produced a long, slender box wrapped in Tiffany blue paper, tied with a pristine white ribbon. Her heart gave a little hopeful flutter. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe the distance she felt was a figment of her own ennui. Marcus was a man of grand gestures. He remembered every birthday, every anniversary. He never, ever forgot. Marcus, you shouldn't have, she said, the lie smooth on her tongue. It was expected. Nonsense. Open it. She carefully untied the ribbon, her fingers tracing the iconic logo. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a necklace. A delicate platinum chain held a single pear-shaped sapphire, the exact shade of his eyes, surrounded by a halo of impossibly small diamonds. It was stunning. It was expensive. It was perfect. And it felt completely impersonal. It was a gift one gives to a valued client's wife, a public statement of affection. It was a necklace to be worn to galas, to be admired by others, a testament to his success. She knew with a sinking certainty that his executive assistant, a ruthlessly efficient woman named Brenda, had likely reminded him of the date and probably even sourced 3 options for him to choose from via email. Still, she summoned the requisite gasp of delight. "Oh, Marcus, it's breathtaking." She leaned forward for him to fasten it around her neck. His fingers were cool and clinical against her skin. He dropped a kiss on her hair, his lips barely brushing the strands. "It suits you," he said, his voice holding the same tone of satisfaction he used when closing a deal. She touched the cool stone at her throat. "Thank you. It's truly beautiful." As Chef Antoine brought in their entrees, the conversation shifted to safer, more public topics, the upcoming fundraiser she was chairing, a potential merger. Marcus's firm was circling Leo's surprisingly good report card in science. It was a script they had perfected, a dialogue of 2 successful partners in the enterprise of their family. The buzz of her unease quieted, numbed by the wine and the practiced rhythm of their life. It was during dessert, a decadent chocolate lava cake that was sinfully rich, that the doorbell chimed. Not the grand melodic peal of the front door, but the sharper, more businesslike buzz from the side entrance off the mudroom. Marcus frowned. Who could that be? At this hour, I don't know. Maybe a late delivery for Leo, Genevieve offered, though it was nearly 9 o'clock. "I'll get it." He stood dabbing his lips with his napkin, the perfect host, even with no one watching. Genevieve could hear the murmur of voices from the hallway, a man's voice apologetic, and Marcus's low and clipped. A moment later, he returned holding a small cube-shaped package. It was wrapped in plain brown paper, looking utterly pedestrian compared to the Tiffany box from earlier. A simple shipping label was affixed to the top. "What is it?" she asked. Marcus glanced at the label, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Annoyance, confusion, delivery mix-up. Driver had the right address, 14 Willow Creek Lane, but the name is wrong. It's addressed to a Ms. Chloe Preston. He said his system must have defaulted to our name since we get so many deliveries. He was in a rush, just asked if I'd hold it. Said she lives somewhere in the next town over. He'd try to swing back tomorrow. He placed the box on the far end of the mahogany sideboard as if to dismiss it entirely. Chloe Preston. Genevieve mused, swirling the last of her wine. "I don't think I know anyone by that name." "Neither do I," Marcus said quickly, a little too quickly. He sat back down, picking up his fork. Now where were we? But Genevieve's eyes kept drifting to the small, anonymous brown box sitting on the sideboard. It was an anomaly, a stray note in their carefully composed symphony. In a life as meticulously planned as theirs, there was no room for wrong addresses or stray packages. A tiny, irrational seed of suspicion planted in the fertile ground of her long, simmering discontent began to take root. She looked at her husband, at his handsome face and his reassuring smile, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a genuine, terrifying emotion: doubt. The evening ended as it always did. Marcus took a work call in his study, his voice a low, authoritative murmur behind the heavy oak door. Genevieve cleared the last of the dessert plates, exchanging pleasantries with Chef Antoine as he packed his equipment. By the time she drifted upstairs, the house was silent again, a vast, echoing space that seemed to magnify her solitude. Marcus came to bed an hour later, smelling of expensive cologne and the faint, crisp scent of the night air. He kissed her cheek, a chaste, familiar gesture. "Happy anniversary, again, Jen," he whispered, his back already turned to her, as he settled into his side of the king-size bed. Within minutes, the steady rhythm of his breathing filled the room. But sleep wouldn't come for Genevieve. The sapphire at her throat felt heavy, like a beautiful stone drowning her. She slipped out of bed, the silk of her nightgown cool against her skin, and padded silently down the grand, curving staircase. The house was bathed in the pale, sterile glow of the security system's motion lights. Her eyes landed immediately on the sideboard. The small brown box was still there, a humble, unassuming intruder in their opulent dining room. "It's nothing," she told herself. "A simple mistake. The delivery guy will get it tomorrow." But the seed of doubt that had sprouted earlier was now an insistent thorny vine, wrapping around her thoughts. Chloe Preston. The name echoed in the silence. Why had Marcus been so quick to dismiss it? Why the flicker of something in his eyes? She told herself she was being foolish, that years of sublimated boredom were turning her into a paranoid housewife from a cheap novel. She walked over to the sideboard, her bare feet silent on the polished hardwood floor. Her intention was just to look at the label again, to confirm the address, to reassure herself. She picked up the box. It was light, almost surprisingly so. The label was clear: Ms. Chloe Preston, 214, Willow Creek Lane, North Caldwell, CT. But the sender's information was what made her breath catch. It wasn't from Amazon or a department store. The return address was for a place she'd never heard of: Vancroft and Company Jewelers. By appointment only, Greenwich, CT. A jeweler. A private appointment-only jeweler in Greenwich, the epicenter of old money and extravagant secrets. Why would a package from an exclusive jeweler intended for another woman be sent to her address? The driver's excuse about a system default suddenly seemed flimsy, a convenient story cooked up on the spot. Her heart began to pound, a frantic, trapped bird against her ribs. This was ridiculous. She was letting her imagination run wild. She should put the box down, go back to bed, and forget the whole thing. But she couldn't. The vine of suspicion was now a thick, choking knot in her chest. With trembling fingers, Genevieve began to peel back the tape on the brown paper. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as if she were defusing a bomb. Inside the wrapping was not a shoebox or a standard cardboard mailer, but a heavy cube-shaped box of dark forest green velvet. There was no logo, no name, just the rich, plush texture under her fingertips. It felt expensive. It felt intimate. She lifted the lid, and the world stopped. It wasn't a necklace. It wasn't a bracelet. Nestled in a bed of pristine white satin was a ring. It was an engagement ring, an impossibly large, cushion-cut diamond flanked by two smaller emeralds set on a delicate, interwoven platinum band. It was a spectacular piece of jewelry, a statement of profound commitment. It was modern, yet timeless. It was breathtaking, and it was not for her. Her mind reeled, trying to make sense of the object in front of her. An engagement ring for a woman named Chloe Preston, sent from a private jeweler, and somehow it had ended up in her hands on her 10-year wedding anniversary. A wave of nausea washed over her. She gripped the edge of the sideboard to steady herself. It had to be a coincidence. A bizarre, cruel, cosmic coincidence. Then she saw the engraving. Her hands shook so violently she could barely lift the ring from its satin bed. She angled it toward the moonlight, slanting in from the tall, arched windows. The inscription on the inside of the band was tiny, an elegant flowing script. My C, my forever, yours M. My C, Chloe, yours M, Marcus. The air left her lungs in a ragged gasp. It felt as if the floor had dropped away, plunging her into a cold, dark abyss. The buzz of unease she'd been living with for months had just become a deafening, soul-shattering roar. This was no coincidence. This was no mistake. This was a confession. Marcus, her Marcus, the father of her child, the man she had built a life with, was not just having an affair. He was planning to propose to another woman. He had bought her an engagement ring, a symbol of a future, a promise of a new life, while simultaneously gifting his wife a pretty meaningless bauble to mark the death of their past. The sheer calculated cruelty of it was staggering. The anniversary dinner, the impersonal necklace, his cool, distant affection, it was all a performance, a carefully staged play to keep her placid and unsuspecting while he orchestrated his betrayal. He wasn't just cheating, he was replacing her. She gently placed the ring back in its box, her movements now eerily calm. The initial shock was hardening into something else, something cold and sharp and dangerous. It was rage, a pure, crystalline rage that burned away the fog of her discontent and left her with a terrible, chilling clarity. She looked at the Tiffany box, still sitting on her dressing table upstairs in her mind's eye. The sapphire necklace, a parting gift, a severance package for 10 years of service as Mrs. Marcus Thorne. Genevieve closed the velvet box, her knuckles white. She wrapped it back up in its plain brown paper, her actions methodical. She was no longer the bored, complacent wife in the gilded cage. She was a woman who had just been handed a weapon. The delivery hadn't been a mistake, it had been fate. And Marcus had no idea that the evidence of his treachery, the very symbol of his secret new life, was not with his intended, but was now in the possession of the wrong woman, the one woman who had the power to burn his entire world to the ground. She walked back upstairs, the brown box held carefully in her hands, and locked it away in the one place she knew Marcus would never look inside, the hat box, containing her old, dusty dreams of a life that was solely her own. The next morning, Genevieve awoke before the dawn. For a moment, a blissful, hazy moment, the world was normal. Then the memory of the ring crashed down on her, a physical weight that made it hard to breathe. She looked over at Marcus, sleeping soundly, his handsome face relaxed and untroubled. A wave of revulsion so strong, it was dizzying, washed over her. She was sharing a bed with a stranger, a liar of monstrous proportions. She slipped out of bed, her mind whirring. The rage from the night before had cooled, solidifying into a cold, hard resolve. She would not scream. She would not cry. She would not give him the satisfaction of a hysterical confrontation he could easily dismiss and manage. He had managed her for a decade. That was over. Her first move was strategic. She went to Leo's room, woke him gently, and with a bright, false smile, told him they were going to have a surprise adventure day. A trip to the city, maybe the Natural History Museum. His delighted squeal was a balm to her shattered heart. Getting Leo out of the house was paramount. She needed space to think, to plan. And more than anything, she needed to protect him from the coming storm. When Marcus came downstairs, dressed in another impeccable suit, she was the picture of domestic calm, packing snacks for Leo. "Morning," he said, kissing the top of her head as he grabbed coffee. "You're up early. Leo and I are heading into the city for the day." "His choice," she said, her voice even a marvel of control. "Don't wait up for us." "Oh, okay." He seemed momentarily surprised, then pleased. It suited his purposes to have her occupied. "Sounds fun. I've got a long day myself. Closing the Abernathy deal. Might be a late one." The name hit her like a physical blow. Abernathy. She kept her back to him, her hands stilling for a fraction of a second. The Abernathy deal. It was a massive account for his private equity firm, one he'd been working on for months. Preston Abernathy was a reclusive old money titan in the tech world, and landing his portfolio was the kind of career-defining move Marcus lived for. He'd mentioned the name dozens of times. "Dinner with Preston Abernathy tonight. Abernathy is playing hard to get. If I land Abernathy, we can finally buy that place in Aspen." Her mind was a race of connections. Abernathy. Chloe Preston. Preston. Could Chloe be Preston Abernathy's daughter, a trust fund baby? It made a sickening kind of sense. It wasn't just an affair, it was a strategic merger of his own. "That's wonderful, dear," she said, turning to face him, her smile feeling like a cheap mask. "I hope it goes well." "It will," he said, with his usual unshakable confidence. He finished his coffee, adjusted his tie. Oh, did that delivery driver ever come back for the box? Genevieve's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression placid. "Not yet. It's still on the sideboard. Don't worry, I'll handle it." "Good." He gave her a quick perfunctory kiss and left the roar of his Porsche fading down the driveway. The moment he was gone, she felt the mask crumble. She leaned against the counter, taking deep, shuddering breaths. Abernathy. After dropping a blissfully unaware Leo at the museum with a trusted sitter, a college student she'd used for years, Genevieve found a quiet cafe, ordered a black coffee she wouldn't drink, and opened her laptop. The war had begun, and her first battlefield was the internet. She started with the jeweler Vancroft & Coty. Their website was the epitome of discreet luxury. No online store, no prices. Just a portfolio of exquisite one-of-a-kind pieces and a single prim message, crafting bespoke legacies since 1884. For a private consultation, please contact our atelier. This was not a place you stumbled into. This was a destination for the very, very wealthy. The kind of place a man like Marcus would go to buy a ring for the daughter of a billionaire. Next, she typed Chloe Preston into the search bar. Nothing. The name was too common. She added Connecticut. A few random profiles, none of them right. Then she took a gamble. She searched Chloe Abernathy. The first result was a Forbes profile of Preston Abernathy. It mentioned his 2 children, a son who ran a division of the family company, and a daughter. Her name was not mentioned. The Abernathys were notoriously private, but the rich and private often had children who were not. Genevieve switched to Instagram. She searched Abernathy, scrolled through hundreds of photos of charity balls, yachts, and polo matches, and then she found it. A photo posted by a popular socialite. A group of young women on a ski trip in Gstaad. The caption read, "Best time with my girls, so good to finally get at." Chloe away on the slopes, Genevieve's blood ran cold. She clicked the tagged profile. Chloe away. The profile was private. Of course it was. A dead end. But Genevieve was relentless. She went back to the socialite's public profile, scrolling through years of photos, looking for other tags, other connections. It was tedious, painstaking work. She found another group photo from a summer gala in the Hamptons. Chloe P. Away was tagged again. This time, so was another profile, a young man whose profile was public. She clicked on his page. He had a photo of him and Chloe clinking champagne glasses on a boat. The caption, "Congrats to my favorite girl on the new gig." He had tagged her. But the tag was different. It wasn't Chloe P. Away. It was an older forgotten tag, @Chloe Abernathy. She must have changed her handle to her middle name Preston to be more discreet. Genevieve felt a jolt of triumph. She clicked the old tag. The profile it led to was now defunct, but the tag itself was a digital breadcrumb. She went back to Google and searched for Chloe Abernathy Preston. And there she was, a single article in a local Greenwich Society blotter from 2 years ago announcing her new role as the head of the Abernathy Family Foundation. The article included a picture. A stunningly beautiful young woman, probably in her late 20s, with glossy dark hair, bright, ambitious eyes, and a confident smile. She looked smart, sophisticated, and utterly sure of her place in the world. Genevieve stared at the face of the woman who was set to replace her. She felt a bizarre, out-of-body detachment. This wasn't just some sordid, fleeting affair with a subordinate. This was a calculated move up the social and financial ladder for Marcus. He wasn't just leaving his wife, he was upgrading. The final piece of the puzzle was the logistics, the delivery. Why had it come to their house? She thought back to the name on the label. Ms. Chloe Preston, 14, Willow Creek Lane, CCO. Care of. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Why would Marcus have the ring, Chloe's engagement ring, sent to the home he shared with his wife? The audacity was breathtaking. Was he hiding it here until he was ready to propose? Did he think she was so oblivious, so wrapped up in her committees and luncheons that she would never notice? Or was it simpler? Was Chloe perhaps staying somewhere without a secure delivery location? A hotel? A temporary apartment? Had he used his own familiar secure address as a drop point, a place he controlled? Genevieve's mind raced. He had mentioned the Abernathy deal was closing. Perhaps the proposal was meant to be the final personal seal on the professional victory, a celebration of his conquest on all fronts. She closed the laptop, the dregs of her coffee, now cold and bitter. She had the who, the what, and the why. She had the weapon locked away in a hat box. The question now was how and when to use it. A quiet divorce was too good for him. A simple confrontation was too easy. No, a man who orchestrates his life with such meticulous, cruel precision deserved to have it dismantled with the same level of care. His grand performance deserved a spectacular, unforgettable finale. And she, the woman he had so casually written out of the script, would be the one to direct it. The days that followed were a masterclass in deception. Genevieve moved through her life with a chilling, newfound purpose. On the surface, she was the same. She hosted a planning brunch for the hospital gala, her smile never faltering as she debated the merits of salmon versus chicken. She took Leo to his soccer practice, cheering from the sidelines with the other mothers. She even feigned a headache one evening to avoid sleeping with Marcus, a performance of weary vulnerability that he bought without a second thought. But beneath the placid surface, a different Genevieve was at work. She had become a private investigator in her own life, and Marcus's polished world was her crime scene. Her first act was to quietly install monitoring software on their shared home computer, the one in the study he often used for personal emails. She had paid a premium for a service that was virtually undetectable. Then she waited. The payoff came 3 days later. Marcus, believing she was at a yoga class, logged on. Genevieve, parked a block away in her SUV, watched the activity unfold in real time on her phone. He didn't use his work email. He used a private Gmail account she'd never known existed. The password was a pathetic cliché, Aspen Dream 22. There it was, an entire universe of betrayal neatly organized into email threads. There were emails to Chloe filled with a passionate, effusive language he hadn't used with Genevieve in years. Counting the seconds until I see you. You're all I think about. Soon, my love. Soon, this will all be real. There were hotel confirmations for his business trips, the St. Regis in New York, the Four Seasons in Boston, with reservations for 2. There were receipts from restaurants Genevieve had wanted to try. For years, places Marcus had always claimed were impossible to get into. There were emails to Vancroft and Conti, the jeweler, discussing the final details of the ring. One email from Marcus read, "The emeralds are essential. They must match her eyes." Genevieve felt a cold, bitter laugh rise in her throat. The sapphire in her own necklace was meant to match his eyes. The symmetry of his cruelty was almost artistic. But the most damning discovery was the financial scaffolding of his affair. He hadn't just been whining and dining Chloe. He was building her a life. He had co-signed the lease on a luxury apartment in Greenwich, a stunning penthouse in a new development. He was paying the rent. Genevieve found the digital lease agreement, his signature right next to hers, Chloe Preston. He'd been siphoning money from a secondary investment account, one Genevieve had only vaguely been aware of, to fund this entire secret existence. He wasn't just having an affair, he was test-driving a new wife. The final brutal confirmation came from Chloe's own private Instagram, Chloe P. away. Armed with the knowledge of their secret life, Genevieve realized she didn't need to break in. She just needed the right key. She created a new anonymous Instagram profile. She made it look like the profile of a young, wealthy art consultant, populating it with generic photos of galleries and sculptures. Then she sent a follow request to a dozen of Chloe's publicly tagged friends. Within a day, she had 3 followbacks. One of them, a girl who seemed to be a professional bridesmaid, had a public profile littered with photos of Chloe. Genevieve scrolled back for months. And there it was, a picture from 6 weeks ago. Chloe standing in an empty, sun-drenched apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. She was holding up a single key. The caption read, "New beginnings, can't wait to make this place a home." Through the window, far in the background, the distinctive clock tower of the Greenwich Town Hall was visible. It was the same penthouse from the lease agreement. Genevieve scrolled further. There were pictures of her with a dog, a golden retriever puppy. "Welcome home, Winston." There was a picture of a bouquet of rare black calla lilies on a marble countertop. "He just gets me." Marcus knew those were Genevieve's favorite flowers, a fact he seemed to have forgotten years ago. He was taking all the intimate details of their life together and simply regifting them to his new model. The rage she felt was no longer hot. It was glacial. It was a force of nature carving new, sharp edges into her soul. He had not only betrayed her, he had plagiarized their life. He had rendered their shared history, their 10 years of marriage, meaningless. She knew she had everything she needed. The emails, the lease, the bank statements, the Instagram photos. And of course, the ring. The evidence was overwhelming, a mountain of deceit she could use to crush him in any divorce court. But a quiet, lucrative divorce wasn't enough. It was a business transaction, and Marcus understood those. He would pay the price, cut his losses, and move on. He would still have the Abernathy deal. He would still have Chloe. He would still in the end win. Genevieve would not allow him to win. He had made their life a public performance, so his downfall had to be a public spectacle. He had humiliated her in private. She would humiliate him in the one arena he truly cared about, the intersection of his professional ambition and his personal pride. She looked at the date on her phone. It was Thursday. The hospital gala, the one she was chairing, was on Saturday night. Preston Abernathy, a major hospital donor, was scheduled to be the guest of honor. He would be there. Chloe would almost certainly be on his arm. And Marcus, fresh off closing the deal of his career, would be the conquering hero. It was to be his coronation. Genevieve smiled, a slow, predatory smile that didn't reach her eyes. The stage was set. The actors were all in place. All she had to do was rewrite the final scene. She picked up her phone and made a call not to a lawyer, but to the one person who could help her execute her plan with the perfect blend of style and discretion. "Antoine," she said when the private chef answered. "It's Genevieve Thorne. I have a rather unusual catering request for a very, very private event." The air in the Vancroft & Co. atelier was hushed, reverent, smelling faintly of lemon polish and old money. Sunlight filtered through discreetly frosted windows, gleamed on the glass cases, displaying magnificent, intimidating jewels. It was a temple of desire, and Genevieve felt a grim satisfaction in choosing it as the site of Marcus's reckoning. Getting the appointment had been surprisingly easy. She had called the day before, her voice a pitch-perfect imitation of a frantic, high-powered assistant. "This is calling for Marcus Thorne," she'd chirped into the phone. "He needs to pick up the Preston ring tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Yes, I know the final payment isn't until next week, but he needs it for a pre-celebratory dinner. He's closing the Abernathy deal tomorrow and wants everything to be perfect. He said you'd understand." The man on the other end, Mr. Dubois, had been a model of discretion. "Of course, we will have it ready." The second call was to Chloe. Genevieve used a burner phone app, her voice altered to a lower professional pitch. "Good afternoon, Miss Preston. This is Catherine from Vancroft & Company. We have your ring ready for its final fitting and collection. Mr. Thorne has arranged for you to pick it up tomorrow. However, there's a small outstanding matter regarding the insurance valuation that requires your signature in person. Would 4:15 be suitable? Mr. Thorne is scheduled to arrive shortly before to handle the final payment." Chloe's voice was bright, excited. "Oh, yes, of course. 4:15 is perfect. Thank you so much." The trap was set. A collision course timed to the minute. At 3:55, Genevieve walked into the atelier. She was not dressed for a gala or a luncheon. She wore a simple, impeccably tailored black dress, her hair pulled back in a severe chignon. In her hand, she carried a simple leather portfolio. The sapphire necklace Marcus had given her was conspicuously absent. She looked less like a scorned wife and more like an executioner. Mr. Dubois, a slender man with a neatly trimmed silver goatee, greeted her with a polite, questioning smile. "Good afternoon, madam. May I help you? I believe you are expecting my husband, Marcus Thorne," Genevieve said, her voice calm and steady. Mr. Dubois's professional poise faltered for a fraction of a second. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Thorne, we were expecting Mr. Thorne. He has been detained," Genevieve said. Smoothly, "He sent me in his place to handle the final payment for the Preston ring." From her purse, she produced Marcus's black American Express card, the one he kept for emergencies in a desk drawer at home. She had photographed the account numbers days ago. Before Mr. Dubois could process this, the bell above the door chimed softly. Chloe Preston walked in. She was even more striking in person, radiating a youthful, effortless confidence. She wore a cream-colored silk blouse and tailored trousers, looking every bit the modern heiress. She smiled brightly at Mr. Dubois, then her eyes fell on Genevieve, a flicker of polite confusion on her face. "I'm here for a 4:15 appointment," Chloe said. "For the Preston ring." Genevieve turned to her, offering a cool, placid smile. "Chloe, it's so good to finally meet you in person. I'm Genevieve Thorne." The name hung in the silent, rarefied air. Chloe's smile froze, the color draining from her face. She knew the name. Of course she knew the name. She looked from Genevieve to Mr. Dubois, her mind clearly scrambling to understand what was happening. I don't understand," Chloe stammered, her confidence evaporating. "Don't you?" Genevieve's voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it all the more menacing. "Let me help you. You're here to pick up your engagement ring. The one my husband, Marcus, bought for you." She paused, letting the words sink in. "There's just been a slight mix-up in the delivery. You see, it was accidentally sent to our home. To me." From her portfolio, Genevieve pulled out the forest green velvet box. She didn't open it. She simply placed it on the glass countertop between them. A silent, damning piece of evidence. Chloe stared at the box, as if it were a venomous snake. "What is this? This is some kind of sick joke. Is it?" Genevieve's eyes were like chips of ice. "Is the penthouse apartment he leased for you a joke? The one he's been paying for with money from our family accounts? Are the trips to Boston and New York a joke? Is the future he promised you a joke?" She opened the portfolio. With deliberate, precise movements, she began laying out her evidence on the gleaming countertop. The printed lease agreement, the credit card statements showing charges for 2 at per se, the hotel folios. Each page was a nail in the coffin of Chloe's fantasy. Chloe was speechless, her face a mask of horror and dawning comprehension. She wasn't his great love. She was a transaction, and the terms were being brutally renegotiated. Just as the full weight of the betrayal seemed to crush Chloe, the bell chimed again. Marcus strode in a broad, triumphant smile on his face. He was holding a bottle of champagne, clearly ready to celebrate. "Dubois, you magnificent man. The Abernathy deal is done. Let's pop this and toast to new beginnings." His smile vanished the moment he saw the scene before him. His wife standing coolly behind a mountain of incriminating documents. His mistress, pale and trembling. And the ring box, sitting between them like a judge's gavel. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the frantic ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner, counting down the seconds of Marcus's life as he knew it. "Gentle," he breathed, his voice a strangled whisper. What are you doing here?" Genevieve looked at him, and for the first time he saw not the accommodating wife, but the woman she truly was, intelligent, ruthless, and completely, utterly done. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice ringing with the clarity of a death knell. "I believe you know everyone here. You were just proposing a toast to new beginnings." "I couldn't agree more." She looked from his ashen face to Chloe's. "The thing about building a new life on a foundation of lies," she said, her voice resonating through the silent atelier, "is that it has a tendency to collapse. And you, my dear, were living in the penthouse suite of a condemned building." She turned to Mr. Dubois, who looked as though he wished the floor would swallow him whole. "We won't be needing the ring. Please refund the deposit to my husband's account. My lawyer will be in touch about the rest." With that, she slid the velvet box across the counter towards Chloe. "Congratulations on the engagement," she said, the words dripping with ice. "I hope it was worth it." Without another glance at the wreckage of the two lives she had just decimated, Genevieve Thorne turned and walked out of the store. Her head held high, the bell on the door chiming her departure like a victory cry. She was no longer a prisoner in a gilded cage. She had just melted it down for scrap. The fallout was not a single booming explosion, but a series of precise, devastating detonations that razed the architecture of Marcus Thorne's life to the ground. Genevieve's confrontation at Vancroft & Conant was the first charge, the one that fractured the foundation. The rest of his world, built on that compromised base, was doomed to follow. The first casualty was his composure. From the cold, silent sanctuary of the jeweler's atelier, Marcus stumbled out onto the Greenwich Street, the celebratory bottle of champagne still hanging ridiculously from his hand. The reality of what had just happened was too vast, too catastrophic to fully comprehend. It was like watching a tidal wave approach from the shore. He could see the horrifying scale of it, but was paralyzed by disbelief. He got into his Porsche, the engine's roar, usually a source of comfort and power, now sounding like a scream. He drove not home, but to the soulless comfort of the Delamar Hotel, where he took a suite overlooking the harbor. There, the frantic calls began. He called Genevieve's cell phone, his initial attempts laced with a desperate, commanding anger. "Jen, pick up the phone. Pick up the damn phone. We need to talk about this. You have no idea what you've just done." The messages evolved into pleading. "Please, Jen, just let me explain. It's not what it looks like." Finally, they devolved into the pathetic, broken ramblings of a man who has lost control. He left 37 voicemails in the first hour, each one a testament to his unraveling. She never answered. He was screaming into a void she had created. While Marcus was imploding in his hotel room, Genevieve was preparing for her coronation. The hospital gala, the event that was meant to be the stage for Marcus's triumph, became hers instead. She arrived deliberately late, stepping out of a black car into the flash of a local society photographer's camera. The whispers started instantly. Her dress was the first topic of conversation. It was a column of crimson silk by a designer Marcus had always deemed too provocative. The dress clung to her form, its backless design, a bold statement of sensual reclamation. Her hair, usually in a soft, controlled style, was swept up, revealing the elegant line of her neck, unadorned by the sapphire necklace he had given her. She wore only her original wedding band, a final, ironic twist of the knife, and a pair of diamond earrings he did not recognize. She did not look like a woman scorned. She looked like a phoenix, risen, her feathers the color of fire. A woman named Barbara, whose children attended the same private school as Leo, intercepted her by the silent auction tables. "Genevieve, darling," she cooed, her eyes alight with voracious curiosity. "We were all so worried. We heard Marcus was taken ill. And poor Chloe Abernathy, too. Is it the flu? It seems to be going around." Genevieve met her gaze with a smile that was serene and utterly impenetrable. "Marcus is dealing with the consequences of his own choices," she said, her voice clear and carrying just enough for those nearby to hear. "And I'm feeling healthier than I have in years. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the catering." She swept past, leaving Barbara speechless and the surrounding gossips with a far more potent piece of speculation than they could have hoped for. Across the grand ballroom, she saw him, Preston Abernathy, standing like a granite statue, surrounded by a deferential circle of board members. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, found hers. For a long moment their gazes held. There was no pity in his expression, none of the condescension she might have expected. Instead, there was a flicker of something else: respect. A silent, mutual acknowledgement between two powerful people who understood the brutal calculus of betrayal and consequence. He gave her the slightest, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of concession and dismissal. The Abernathy chapter was closed for both of them. The next day, the professional guillotine fell. Marcus was summoned to the downtown Stamford office of his private equity firm for a 10 a.m. meeting with the senior partners, a trio of older men who valued their firm's sterling reputation above all else. He walked in, attempting to project an aura of control, but his haggard appearance and bloodshot eyes told the real story. Marcus began the senior partner, a man named Philip, without any preamble. "We have a problem. Preston Abernathy pulled his portfolio this morning. All of it." He cited a sudden and irreparable loss of confidence in the character of his primary liaison. "I can fix it," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "I can talk to him, smooth it over." "No, you can't." Another partner, David, cut in, his tone glacial. "The story is everywhere. Vancroft's is a small world. The gala was an echo chamber. You didn't just embarrass yourself, Marcus. You didn't just get caught. You chose to detonate a bomb in the middle of the most important deal this firm has seen in 5 years, and you tainted it with your personal indiscretions. You made us look like fools." Marcus looked from face to face, seeing no allies, no sympathy. These were the men he had golfed with, whose children he knew. But in this world, loyalty was a currency secondary to profit and reputation. He had devalued both. "We've drawn up a severance agreement," Philip said, pushing a thick folder across the polished mahogany table. "It's generous. It includes a strict non-disclosure agreement. You will resign, effective immediately, for personal reasons. Your departure will be quiet. Is that understood?" It was not a negotiation. It was an execution. He had been exiled from the kingdom he had helped build. The legal battle was not a battle at all. It was a surrender. Genevieve's lawyer, Diana, a woman known for her merciless efficiency, laid out the evidence in her stark white conference room. The printouts of the Gmail account, the digital lease for Chloe's penthouse, the itemized credit card statements detailing a life of duplicity paid for with marital funds. "It's the most beautifully compiled case of asset dissipation I've ever seen," Genevieve Diana said, a rare note of admiration in her voice. "You did all the work. My job is simply to collect." Marcus's legal team, seeing the mountain of irrefutable proof, advised him to settle quickly and quietly. Any attempt to fight would only result in a more public and more costly humiliation. The divorce decree was signed within weeks. Genevieve retained the house on Willow Creek Lane for the time being, along with primary custody of Leo and a financial settlement so significant it guaranteed her independence for the rest of her life. She was not just a survivor, she was victorious. She never heard from Chloe Preston again. The name simply ceased to exist in her world. The vibrant Instagram profile was deleted. Her name vanished from the masthead of the Abernathy Family Foundation. She had been erased, a casualty of a war she hadn't realized she was fighting until it was already lost. Genevieve sometimes pictured the spectacular cushion-cut diamond sitting in its velvet box, a monument to a future that had evaporated, and felt not triumph, but a profound sense of pity. As spring blossomed, Genevieve began the final stage of her own reckoning, the reclamation of her space. She hired an estate sale company to purge the house on Willow Creek Lane. She was unsentimental, ruthless. Marcus's suits, His collection of expensive watches, the ugly abstract painting he'd insisted on buying, it all went. She kept the photographs of Leo, her books, and a few pieces of furniture that held no memory of him. The house, once a gilded cage, was now just a house, an empty shell she was ready to shed. She and Leo moved into a sun-drenched brownstone in a quieter part of town. It had a small, wild garden in the back and a bright, airy room on the top floor that she claimed as her own. It was there, surrounded by the books she loved and the quiet hum of a life she was building herself, that she began to write. The story poured out of her, the words a catharsis. It was fiction, but it was forged in the fire of her own truth, a story of a woman underestimated, a life reclaimed. One bright May afternoon, as she was wrestling with a particularly difficult chapter, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, a Manhattan area code. "This is Genevieve Thorne," she answered, her voice now holding a new note of authority. "Ms. Thorne," a man's voice said. It was warm, professional. "My name is Michael Corrigan. I'm a senior partner at Westbridge Capital. Please forgive the unsolicited call, but I was given your name by a mutual acquaintance, Mr. Preston Abernathy." Genevieve's fingers stilled on her keyboard. "Mr. Abernathy? Yes. He spoke very highly of you. He was extremely impressed by your recent handling of a complex personal and financial situation. He mentioned your discretion, your meticulous planning, and your strategic thinking." There was a pause. He said, and I quote, "She's the only person who has ever cost me money that I've ended up admiring." A slow smile spread across Genevieve's face. "Ms. Thorne," Michael continued, "I know your background is primarily in art history. Westbridge Capital is in the process of endowing a major, new philanthropic foundation for the arts. We need a director. We don't need another stuffy academic or a by-the-numbers administrator. We need someone with a sharp, analytical mind. Someone who understands value not just of art, but of people. Someone who knows how to navigate treacherous waters and can spot a forgery, be it on a canvas or in a boardroom." Preston thought you might be that person. He thought you might be looking for a new chapter. Genevieve looked around her sunlit study at the pages of her novel lying on the desk. She was already writing her new chapter. But a new book was an even better prospect. The life she had been living, the one that had been chosen for her, was over. The life she was about to lead would be entirely her own creation. "Mr. Corrigan," she said, her voice clear, confident, and ringing with the promise of a future she would design herself. "Tell me more." That single misdelivered ring did more than just expose a lie. It shattered a gilded cage and set a woman free. Genevieve's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the most devastating betrayals can lead to the most profound liberations. It's about finding your strength, not in spite of the heartbreak, but because of it. What starts as a story of marital deceit becomes a tale of reclaiming one's own power, narrative, and future. What did you think of Genevieve's revenge? Was it justified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you, and your stories matter. If you were captivated by this story of drama and empowerment, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves a good story, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas every week. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for listening.